Confederation of Planets, the United Nations, World War II, the Dominion Federation War, the art of war, the teachings of Sirach, Jesus Christ, Kalis the Unforgettable.
Namaste, Homo sapiens. Welcome to another exciting episode of PoliTreks. We are going to continue our engaging with Star Trek Picard series in this episode with episode 5, Stardust City Rag. So if you've been following the previous 4 episodes, what I, and if I'm lucky enough, a special guest will do, and we do have a special guest for this episode, what we will do is break down the entire episode that was broadcast earlier this week from Star Trek Picard. We'll go in deep on the Easter eggs, metaphors, themes, and just in the most PoliTreks way possible, we'll try to connect it to the real world's politics and culture and society. And we have a lot of that today. I feel like Stardust City Rag had a lot of Easter eggs and connections and metaphors that I'm excited to get into with my special guest. But before I tell you who that is, I am delighted to tell you that we are part of the Trek Geeks Network. We are a Trek Geeks podcast. And of course, 2 people as weird as me and Barry would end up on the Trek Geeks Network. So that makes sense. One day we will tell you the full story of how we ended up here. That seems like it should be a podcast on its own. But I couldn't do that because my typical co-host, Barry DeFord, is off doing better things and he has become too good for this show. So that's what he has betrayed you listeners. He does not think that you're worth his time. I'm messing. He's a very sweet Canadian. He is doing another show called Picard Live, also on the Trek Geeks Network, which has a bit of a different format. You can actually find him on the YouTubes and Facebooks and all your other live streaming apps doing it as a live streamed show, which is very cool. I think you should check out Picard Live by Barry DeFord. Hopefully here soon we will have him back doing one of these with me so I can get my old friend back. Damn you, Trek Geeks, for taking my old friend away from me. Also, thanks for letting us be on the network. We're also sponsored by Fansets. And Fansets have so many cool pins coming out. Later in the show, not only will I tell you about our exciting discount code, I also have some special exclusive Trek Geeks Network news on some of the pins that are going to come out here in the near future. But for now, I'll just say that we are so lucky to have Fansets as a sponsor. If you have not checked them out, go to fansets.com. I'll tell you more about the website later in the show. Now, on to the actual episode, engaging with Star Trek Picard, Stardust City Rag. All right, well, we are back and we are excited. And when I say we, I mean, of course, me and a special guest. Now, my special guest and me we go back a ways. I know my friend that I will be introducing to you today from Literary Treks. I have been fortunate enough to be on that show. He also does another show called Live from the Edge occasionally, and he had me on for some of the Star Trek Discovery episodes, which was such a fun time that he does with another delightful podcaster, Brandy Jocola. Without further ado, I am so lucky to have my friend, Admiral Rex, Bruce Gibson. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. You know, I find your listeners are worth listening to the show and having anybody show up. I don't know why Barry would not show up, why he would do this to you and the listeners. It's embarrassing. I just felt like I need to come in and save the show.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me. I was missing a white man's perspective because we don't have that. We definitely do not have enough of that on podcasts.
You don't get any more white man than I am right now.
Yes, I've not talked to my friend Bruce for a while in audio video form, and I've seen that he has grown a beard, a very nice peppered beard, and he has grown his long hair. He is looking like Wolverine is ready to sit down and do a podcast with me. So I am excited and slightly intimidated.
Yes, I'm excited because this is my first time on PoliTreks, so I'm really excited about that. And this is also my first time on the Trek Geeks Network, so this is like a double whammy for me.
Yes, I am so glad. You know, people usually say save the best for the last. I'm glad you saved the best for the first.
Yes.
And you're starting with the best. And if you end up on another Trek Geek show, a lot of cool ones, but this is the best. So, welcome aboard, my friend. Happy to have you.
Thank you. And I'm just thankful that, I can step in where Barry can't.
Yeah.
That's all.
And if you want to tell us more about how much you think Barry is actually worth your time, and he's such a betrayer, a traitor to the values of PoliTreks, you can tell us that on @PoliTreks on Twitter. That is PoliTreks on Twitter. You can also talk to us. We have a Facebook page, but I do not engage with it, pun intended. There is also a Camp Kitama group on Facebook, which is, I believe, all about positive fandom from Trek Geeks. I do not use Facebook. Henceforth, I do not know and cannot personally vouch for these things, but I've heard a lot of good things. Are you on there, Bruce? Can you vouch for the goodness of these pages and groups?
I am in those groups, yes, and I've gone to those pages, so I can vouch that they are good, yes.
Awesome. I am so glad to have you. All right, well, let's get into the actual show. It's just going to be a casual scene by scene. We just go through scene by scene. I'll share some facts with you, some things about the real world parallels to a Fenris Rangers type group. That might go back to pre-Civil War times, and just crazy conspiracy theories about what the Conclave of Eight might be, and some interesting little Easter eggs that you caught, some that I don't think you did catch, that I caught, that I think I'm excited to share and get your opinions on. Just so much goodness to get into. Before we jump into the scene by scene, what did you think of the episode Stardust City Rag? Also tell us, in this little discussion, tell us also how you've been enjoying the show so far and where Stardust City Rag ranks for you so far.
Oh, the ranks. I have problems with the ranks. So this episode, when I saw a preview of it, I thought, okay, this I feel like is going to be a lot of fun, because just seeing Rios all, pimped out with the hat and everything, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so fun. I mean, it's fun, but it's not as fun as I thought it was going to be. I thought this was going to be one of, this one special funny episode, and it's got some fun to it, but it's a lot of serious moments too, of course. But gosh, I don't know where I would rank it, maybe second or third so far, but overall, I am really liking the Star Trek Picard series. I have to admit, when we got to episode 3, I felt that it was just kind of just stuck. Like, we're still building the intro to things. And I was like, at that point, I was like, okay, I'm ready to get into this. I'm ready to move forward. And by the time we got to episode 4 and now this one, I feel like it's really starting to pick up speed. And I hear from a reliable source of continue to pick up speed as we go along. So I'm excited about that.
Well, that is great. I'm glad you have sources on the inside, much like the Jatwaj inside the Tal Shiar inside Starfleet. It's very intriguing, and I liked how you set up that mystery.
So inside, just kind of inside, looking in, not real inside.
Yeah, we get it, man. We get it. You're hooked up. We get it. I'm mostly along the lines of how you felt, but I might have enjoyed the episode a little more because notoriously, I am the person who enjoys most of the Ferengi episodes. I am the person who enjoys most of the holodeck episodes, most of the mirrored universe episodes. Anything that is color and light, I'm like a 6-month-old child. You can get all my attention with things like jangling keys and lights and sounds. And this episode has all of those.
So all we have to do is have Picard jingle keys and you're good.
I'm good. That's like, I will give you my CBS All Access money for the rest of my life. Wow. You can just have it. And so I quite enjoyed this episode. This might actually be my favorite after the pilot. The pilot still remains my favorite.
Okay, so I was thinking the pilot is my favorite, and I was thinking of the 4th episode as being my second favorite. Like, it's close with this one.
Mm-hmm. And what I also appreciated, I think this will be the last time they do it, at least in this season, but it's almost like a short story on its own. Even if you really do not look at what happens next and where everything goes, you can still just enjoy the fact that for an hour you got Patrick Stewart in an eye patch and Rios's feather in the hat and 7 of 9 being the Punisher, just all kinds of cool things happening. We'll get into it. But anyway, so now that we are actually getting into the episode, so the episode starts with, the standard last time on Star Trek Picard. Then you jump in and you go to this planet Vergessen. I think I got that right.
Yes.
And in that planet, you go into this weird Nazi style crazy experimentation lab that is supposed to remind you of just horrible things happening in the name of medicine. And
it's in the 7 domes. Yeah.
Yes, the 7 domes, correct. And so you find Icheb on an operating table, but he's clearly hurt and close to death, if not all just moments away from it. And he is being operated upon live by, now that is not Bajizel, correct?
Correct. Yeah, that's a different actor. I didn't know that at the time, but I've heard since then. It's
just one of the crazy Nazi style scientists who is just experimenting with Icheb's body, trying to remove all the Borg implants. Now, let's talk about a little bit about Icheb. This is if I remember correctly, this is the 3rd actor to play Icheb, right? It's not. There were 2 before. I believe so. There were 2 before.
I don't know. I just know of the primary one, but you're right. There could have been.
There was an episode where they went into the future and they show Icheb in the future.
Oh, yeah. You're right. Okay. In that case, yes, you're correct. So, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I think it was Shattered or something. I could be wrong, which is why I'm not being very loud about it. But I'm sure our fans will catch it and tell me about it. But yeah, so this is the 3rd actor who plays Icheb. And I think he did a pretty good job just showing off the horror and the nightmare of not only being claimed, but now being torn apart into pieces.
I was horrified.
And, let's talk about that. So is this the goriest scene that has ever been in Star Trek?
Oh, I love this question. My answer to that would be yes, but I do a live show on YouTube with some other people, Dan Guthrie and Brady Jacola. And
what is it called?
You know what? We don't even have a name for it. It's on the PoliTreks YouTube channel. It's PoliTreks is Star Trek spelled backwards. And because we were doing Live from the Edge on Trek FM, we decided, well, they're not doing a live show about Picard. Well, let's just go on Dan's channel and do a live show. And we don't have a title for it. It's just there. But anyway, it's on Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. I asked that same question. I said, this is the goriest thing we've ever seen in Star Trek. And Brandy starts arguing that, she thinks, oh gosh, what's the episode? TNG with the parasite that goes in the guy's mouth and his head explodes.
Sure.
That one. And then she said the motion picture, which surprised me. She said the transport accident to her is the goriest, which is funny because that movie was rated G.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, yes, this is the goriest. I don't think I've ever watched anything Star Trek where I had to look away like I did for this.
Yeah. And I think it's necessary to establish. I thought the gore was necessary, in my opinion, because the show is clearly not for children. They're not making it so the family can get together and have popcorn ready to go and the dog sitting next to you and watching. This is not that show.
Well, you'd be surprised. Some families still might do that,
and that's okay. I appreciate and embrace all families that do all those things, but typical families would probably steer away from the show with its cussing and its dark themes. And now this kind of gore. Those 2 scenes don't particularly strike me as horrifying. I think it's kind of subjective, but the one that I can think of, the closest that I could come to is Vok's skin grafting to turn him into Tyler in Discovery.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, that would probably be the closest one for sure.
And it's interesting to me that there is, again, like a Vok-like thread in this episode that we find out about, that we'll talk about. Oh, but I should have said this at the beginning, but I'm sure our listeners already know. All spoilers, guys. Full spoiler discussion. Just spoilers everywhere. Just make sure you watch the episode. I don't think we ruined a whole lot for you, but the listeners know.
Look, if you're going to do a show about an episode, you have to expect there's going to be spoilers.
Yeah, so this is
dance around it.
Yeah, this is full spoilers. Anyway, so we find out there is like a Vok-like turn at the end of the episode with Jurati, so we'll talk about that.
Yeah, because that one I did not pick up. By the way, do you know what I think is the most scariest and gruesome thing I've seen in Star Trek?
No, tell me.
And this is what I said in the live show. It's that scene where you see Worf in the mud bath and his code T just barely touches the mud. It freaks me out. That just freaks me out, people. Come on.
The scariest and most gruesome thing I have seen in Star Trek is Code of Honor.
Oh, well, yeah. Oh, I that one is blocked from my mind. I can't even remember that now.
Code of Honor, Profit and Lace, just
Yeah.
all the all-star hits. Those scare me much more than what we saw here. So
Well,
I saw.
think Ichep was watching those in the scene. I think that's why he was screaming.
I saw online that some people got mad about the gore, and I get it.
Yeah.
What do you think? Was the gore necessary for you? Did you find that it added to the plot? Did you think that if they didn't do it, you would not have looked at the episode the same way?
Look, here's the thing. I don't like gore, but as you mentioned, this is a more adult type of Star Trek, and it got its point across because Ichep is in a lot of pain. He's going through a lot of terror himself. So just being squeamish and looking at that, it's like you can feel for him. It's like, oh gosh, no. I mean, that's how he's feeling. I mean, is it necessary? I don't know if it's necessary that they had to do that. I think they could still kind of get it across, but it's more impactful that they did that. And so it becomes even more, I feel, my emotions went more out to him because it was just so terrible. And just seeing the anguish that Seven is going through too. Yeah, but it's a weird way to start an episode.
Yeah,
just going in like going, I don't want to look at this.
If people so far have not realized that this is an adult show, this is the scene that for them will be like, oh, either they'll be like, I am good, I'm on board, let's go, or they'll turn it off. And this is like, I think the make or break. If past this point you keep watching the show, you have no right to complain that, oh, this is an adult show, I never realized it. No, you saw this scene.
Well, I've been all in favor of Quentin Tarantino doing a Star Trek, and I know it would be more adult and probably more violent and whatever. And I think, well, if I'm all in favor of seeing his version of Star Trek, I should be okay with this one.
I feel like you and I are the only two people that are in favor of that. You're the first person that I'm talking to in the Trek community who was like,
really?
Yes, let's go for a Tarantino Trek. I was so excited for it. I don't think it'll happen now, but maybe like a script or production credit. Anyway, back to this episode. So I thought it was necessary because it drove across two things for me. The first one was Seven killing Icheb. You can, to do it in that short an amount of time, you have to show what kind of pain the person is in. And I don't think you could have done that without the gore. And then the second thing is what she does at the end, which is her murder is justice route that she takes, which is completely opposite from what Picard is trying to do. And she's out on this one woman, no holds barred, I'm going to get everyone I can, bloodbath mission, and she will not stop. And you can see why that hurts her so much because you've seen what happens at the start of the episode. So that's how I felt about it. And yeah, it was any other notes on that scene? Did you pick up anything interesting?
Well, I mean, he's in the newer uniforms, and he has two pips, so he's a lieutenant. And the uniform is in command red, but later in the episode, it's mentioned about him being a scientist or being in the sciences. So why wouldn't it be blue? But in, as they say, my head canon, I just assume that he's just, he may be a scientist, but he's going on the command track right now.
Sure. Yeah, the biggest parallel to me when I saw all that was the Nazi experimentation that happened during the Third Reich's reign on Germany and the concentration camps. And I think part of it is supposed to evoke that. That's how I took it. Yeah. And especially how that woman is just very casual about things. She's enjoying it. Yeah. She's getting
not
off
doing anything to, help him through the pain. It's just like, you're going to get the pain. And I'm just, I'm thinking about what I'm going to have for lunch later today.
Yeah. And she is not only, it's a game for her almost. Like she's like, oh, where is that? Like a node or something she's looking for inside. And she's just pulling things out. It's a gruesome scene. And I thought it was necessary. Please tell us what you think. I'm excited to hear what everybody thought. Just keep it civil, keep it respectful. I saw some people going after other people on this. It was so ridiculous. Just calm down. We're living in an age where there are 3 Trek shows happening right now. Like right now, as we speak, Discovery season 3 is imminent. The Lower Decks season is about to come out, and Picard is happening. Just how can you be so angry and mad, you guys? Come on.
Well, I would prefer no gore because I don't like gore, but I don't have a problem with it. If that's the direction they want to go in, that's fine. You just got to live with it.
Yeah. And it's like, I believe Michael Chabon also responded to a comment of a Facebook person saying, hey, but what the hell with the gore? And he was like, we're not immediately saying this should be a gory show, but as a team, we thought this is what will drive the point across of the pain and the horror. And that's why you kept it in. But really, if you think about it, it's maybe a couple of minutes.
And you don't really see a lot. I mean, I think you see more than what you did. We talked about this on the live show too, because, there's this like drill or needle going towards the eye. You never see it touch the eye.
Right.
There's certain camera angles where you're seeing, or you think you're going to see something, but it doesn't move to the other side of his face. It stays on the side of the face where nothing's happening. So really the goriest thing that you are seeing is just when the eyeball is being pulled up. So it's not that believe me, I've seen The Walking Dead. It's not like that.
I have seen all the Saw movies. I'm a fan of those movies.
Oh my gosh, no. Forget that.
Anyway, so now we jump to the next scene, which happened 2 weeks ago. And it's on Freecloud. We go to Freecloud for the first time. And then we see Mr. Vup, right? That's his name, coming up to Bajazel in this clearly what looks like a very fancy version of the Trek Geeks party at STLV.
I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yes.
It is kind of like that, isn't it?
I'll be honest, I was really disappointed that they didn't even leave like an STLV name drop anywhere in the back in that Blade Runner style zoom through they were doing. I was like, come on, guys, throw some love to the Las Vegas convention where your biggest audience shows up. But hey, I'm
disappointed now that we didn't see Bill and Dan in the scene giving out Fansets pins or something. Yeah,
just saying Fansets discount codes and yelling at each other.
Where are Bill and Dan? Where are they? This is my first time on Trek Geeks, and they're not even here. Ugh. And Barry, everybody's just okay. Go on, whatever.
Bruce, you know what? I'm here for you, my friend.
You are here, and you are the reason I'm here. If I had to choose anybody, it would be you.
You of course agree I'm the best of what Trek Geeks offers.
Well, you notice I've had you on my shows. So.
Yes, thank you so much. And that's how we do it. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. Anyway, so now we land into this Freecloud setting. It reminded me very much of like just holodeck scenes, like a lot of the casino stuff, the James Bondy stuff we saw in DS9, the Riker lover who he falls in love with and plays the
Minuet.
Yeah, Minuet. Just all those. It got me all those Minuet vibes. And anyway, so here we find out that Bajazel is a lady running things, and Mr. Vup, who is a beta Anari, comes up to her and says, hey, we found Bruce Maddox. And she's like, oh, how the mighty have fallen. And then just before she's about to say, go ahead and kill him, she says, new plan. And then we see Bruce Maddox sit down with Bajazel. And before we talk about it now, it's obvious, maybe not that obvious. It's not the same Bruce Maddox we saw in Measure of Man.
It's not the same actor, no. And that was the one thing I knew going into this, because that morning when I got up to watch it, I had to go online to look up something, and I saw somebody mention it was a different actor. However, if I watched this episode not knowing that, I may have assumed it was the same actor. It's just, it's 30 years later. He's got a beard and his hair's curlier. It's grown out. I would just assume, I would be questioning, is that the same actor? I wonder. He doesn't look the same, but it's been 30 years. But regardless, I don't care because it worked. I mean, it's not like he's so different.
Yeah, that is true. They have the same build and the way they kind of look. And you really don't remember Bruce Maddox that much unless you've watched Measure of a Man multiple times, which I believe a bunch of people have. But it's been so long, you can kind of forgive it. And he looks a lot different too, which I think helps.
Yep.
And let's just say, like, for the casual person who is paid $5.99 just to watch Picard and is not that deep into like TNG, they'll not remember that this is a different actor. They'll just and that's fine. Anyway, so they land here. What did you think of that scene where Maddox and Bajazel talk to each other, and then she drugs him out, basically?
With Tranya. I like that. That's a little Easter egg, the Tranya.
Yes. Is it Tranya or Janya?
I think it's Tranya.
Okay, and that's it's just like alcohol.
That was the Clint Howard drank in that early episode, when he was the little guy on the ship. Oh gosh, what was the name of the episode? I can't remember. Is it the man trap? Is that the one? No, I can't remember.
Yeah.
No, the Corbinite maneuver. That's
Yes.
the episode.
Awesome.
They had Tranya. He's like, come on in, have some Tranya. That's what that is. Gosh,
Awesome.
I almost lost my Star Trek credit.
I'm impressed that you remember that because I do not. That's why I'm glad I have you on the show.
And
And
Jazel, I thought looked like Deanna Troi from back in the day.
yeah, she's like a young. She's like if the Deanna Troi from Face of the Enemy just became human again and then went down to Ryza and began living her life there.
Yeah,
that's what she
It
looks
does
like.
look like that.
Exactly
It
like
does
that.
look like
It's incredible. And I like the bamboo thing she's wearing on her shoulders. Did you notice that? The bamboo shoulder pads?
Yeah, I was like, okay, that's supposed to make it look futuristic or something. I don't know,
Mhm.
but yeah.
I thought that was interesting too. It was so a couple things I picked up here. Now Maddox says as soon as he lands, clearly they've known each other in the past, Maddox and Jazel. That's why he trusts her, and he shows up and he's like, my lab has been destroyed by this molecular solvent. That's probably the same solvent that they killed Daj with and Daj's boyfriend when they did everything in the room. And you remember when Laris and Picard go there, they find out, they realize it's like, oh, it's like nothing even happened in this room, right?
Yeah. It is like that. I didn't think about that, but yeah, I think you might be right on.
So I think there is some kind of, he calls it a molecular solvent. There's some kind of solution that is going around with these Jatvash people. And I bet it'll come into play in the future. I'm sure we'll find out more about it. That was kind of interesting to me. But anyway, find out she's drugged out and she drugs him out and he just falls to the floor and she's just waiting. And then we cut away. Any other notes on that scene? Anything you picked up?
Well, just at the end of that scene, I wondered, is he drugged out or is he dead? I wasn't even sure if he was dying at that moment. So I was like, is that the end of Bruce Maddox? We just get that scene? I don't know.
Well, I thought that for a second too, but I remembered back when she was like, go and kill him. And then she stops up and says, new plan. So I was like, you could not kill him because this is an elaborate way to kill him. Why would you just bring him here and kill him?
Yeah,
like
that's
it was
true.
Unless we find out more about who she is later.
And maybe
on
the
anyway.
intention wasn't to kill him. Maybe he was just allergic to Tranya and she didn't know. Oops, sorry. He was allergic. Oh, he's dead. Okay.
Interesting.
End of episode. Tune in next week.
So now we cut to the study of Picard, his study, his holodeck study, whatever you want to call it, on the La Serena. And you find out that Picard and Seven are having a conversation. Picard walks into his room and Seven follows him and she's like, what the hell are you doing here, Picard? I found her drink of choice interesting, how far she has come from Voyager.
Yes. Wasn't it bourbon, straight bourbon, I think?
Yeah, she was like bourbon straight up. And she went from realizing just how heavenly cheesecake is.
Right. That would have been funny if she asked for cheesecake.
That would have been perfect, man. I would have just about said this is the greatest episode of all time. If she had asked for cheesecake or just like a cheesecake milkshake. I'm sure somebody makes those.
Oh, that would be good.
And so she asks for bourbon straight up. And then he kind of tells a little bit about mission that they're on. And then she tells him, oh yeah, I'm about to go to Fenris because that's where our money is, the Rangers' money. And she mentions she's part of this group called Fenris Rangers.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think of this? What did you think of the scene? What do you think of the Fenris Rangers concept? Just give us your thoughts, man.
Well, we had that episode where they were saying that the planet had a shield around it that was set up by the Rangers. And I remember back then thinking, what are the Rangers? What is that? What are they talking about? And now we're getting more exposure to that. I found this to be very interesting. It's like a rebel group, taking the laws into their own hands. And as Seven says, what laws? And Picard's like, good point. They're helping out those areas that haven't been protected, that through this disruption of the supernova and getting rid of the neutral zone or I don't even know, maybe it's parts of the neutral zone are still around, possibly, I don't know. But things have been reset in the galaxy, in this area of space. And so some planets, I think, are under Federation protection and some aren't. And those that aren't, she's there to take, the law into her own hands, doing protection. I thought that was a really interesting concept because here's somebody who used to be a Borg that has simulated people, and then she had to find her humanity, and now she's saving humanity.
It's pretty incredible how far she has come, and she calls it ranging. She says it's exhausting, it's pointless, it's stressful, but she likes doing it. which is just helping people reclaim who they are before they were assimilated.
Yeah.
And this has obvious parallels to me in the real world to all the slave rescues that happened before the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation. There are so many, like Harriet Tubman is the most famous one, the slave rescuer who would go out and rescue slaves after she got her freedom. It was just, I thought that was such a connection to everything that was going on at the time. I found it interesting that Seven is the character they chose to do this with. They could have maybe gone a couple of other ways. Like I can see maybe Hugh doing it, and just maybe
it makes a lot of sense it would be Hugh, yes.
Because because he's the character who we kind of have this conversation from the first time. Because if I remember correctly, Borg happened before Voyager even aired,
Right,
if I remember correctly.
Yep.
So but I'm glad they chose Seven because she's so cool. Like,
oh yeah.
Just how can we just talk for a second about how lucky we are that Seven's back? When she's sitting across from Picard and Picard is saying things and she raises her Borg eyebrow with the implant, I was like, how did I get this lucky? What did I do in my life to get this scene? To get Picard and Seven sitting and talking to each other.
Yeah, and also just to see Seven looking a little different. Her hair's down. She's in regular clothes. She's not in the cat suit, and she's more human. She's got more expression. And yeah, to see the two of them together, that's something we never probably ever expected to ever see. At least as the years went on and on, who would ever expect we'd ever see Picard and 7 and 9 together in a scene? I never would have expected that. I only get that from the novels.
Just think about if you think about the sequence of events that have led to Picard and Seven sitting across from each other in a scene, you have to think about the Kelvin movies happening, and then the rise of TV, then the rise of streaming, to a point where they could justify doing a show in which they could bring Picard back and then bringing Seven. Like the number of things that led to it all falling together. I feel like I feel like the Picard's portrait in the credits, which is like pieces coming together to form him. I was like, just how fortunate that this is happening. And
anybody who complains that, I have to pay for another service, I have to pay to watch these wouldn't exist if it wasn't for CBS All Access. They're doing the same thing they did when they launched the UPN network. They put Voyager on to be the flagship show to start a new network. And in the 70s, before the motion picture, Paramount was going to start a new TV network, and they were going to use Star Trek for that. So they seem to turn to Star Trek to be that anchor that starts off a new network and bring viewers in. And that's what they're doing with CBS All Access. I mean, I'm not saying we wouldn't have had another Star Trek show at some point, but I think maybe even in 2020, if they hadn't launched CBS All Access, we'd be sitting here going, could we get a new Star Trek on TV? We'd still be waiting.
Yeah, it's incredible to me. And if you go back all the way to the original series, one of the reasons why that show is so colorful is because they had all those buttons and panels, so people would buy color TVs. That's right. Yes, because NBC was owned by RCA, and RCA was selling color TVs. It's like, come on, you guys, just get... let's not even go there. Like, I have so many things I want to talk about with the Fenris Rangers. Now, we've talked about like the real world parallels, but coming back to Star Trek, like, you remember the Bajoran freedom fighters that they would talk about that kind of branched off into the Maquis? Yes. And then you had like wherever Kira was in her own weird little place that is not quite the Maquis, but also she's not like working for the Cardassians. It was like, they showed so many degrees for me that I appreciated, that connected to just different things in Star Trek. Are there any other freedom fighter type organizations that I've not talked about in Star Trek? I'm sure there are. I can't think off the top of my head, but when you were saying about Bajoran freedom fighters, it reminded me that if anybody hasn't, not to say that this is in there, but just reminded me, read the Picard novel that came out by Una McCormick, The Last Best Hope. It touches a little bit on that. Let's just say that. Interesting. I need to check that out. I have not read that yet. So yeah, I found a lot of parallels there, and it was an interesting scene. And then she asks him, "Hey, so tell me, what are you doing?" And he begins to tell her, and she's like, "Just give me another bourbon," which was like a nice cutaway to me. Now it cuts to Rios and Raffi. They're on the bridge, just zooming into space, and Rios is about to engage in his vice with a cigar, and Rafi's like,
Yes.
none of that here.
I love that. Because that's what I was hoping for. Because, they're smoking in episode 3, and I was like, oh gosh, now we're smoking in Star Trek, and I was hoping, well, these characters are still trying to find themselves and their purpose, and I was hoping we get to a point where they're starting to reject that, and we'll get into that a little more, but I love that she's telling Rios, put that away.
I also like that if you think about it, he's the captain of the ship and she's telling him what to do. So it's clearly somebody, we know who's running the ship, quite
That's
literally
true.
and metaphorically.
I haven't thought about that. Yeah. And he's kind of freaking out. He's got 2 former Borg on there. It's just coming to that realization.
And she's connecting the pieces with him, and she's like, yeah. And he's like, you got me some strange cargo this time, Rafi. And she's like, yeah, I know. Tell me about it. That was such an interesting connection. Now we got to Jurati. And this is where we start uncovering the layers. Now, listeners of this show will know that from episode 2 or episode 3, I had my suspicions, my strong suspicions that Jurati is not who she seems to be. So I actually thought, this is how far I went. I thought she was a skin-grafted Maddox. So I thought she was actually Maddox who had decided not to look like Maddox so she could get away and do all her nefarious activities. I was close. She is Maddox's lover. And together, she had an instrumental role in coming up with these synths and everything we know about them. So we got to this interesting video that Jurati is watching, and she's recording Maddox baking. Now, but just before I get into my thoughts of the scene, what do you think of this scene? Just talk to me about it.
Well, they're making chocolate chip cookies and they're kissing, and I don't like to kiss someone while I'm eating. That's what stood out in my mind.
Thanks for that deeply insightful, intelligent comment.
So now I'm thinking this is the more gory part of the episode. I thought the episode was interesting only because, first of all, I also thought, I think there's a pretty decent age difference maybe between them. I don't know. Not that that's a big deal, but I thought it was interesting because as he makes synthetic, artificial people, he can't do that with food. It has to be real, which I thought was interesting.
So, I did want to talk to you about that. Now, I have an interesting theory about the foreshadowing of what Maddox is trying to do with the synths that he's making. Now, if you remember, Jurati says to him, you have replicated the flour, the eggs, the chocolate, but you're trying to put them in fire. Why are you doing that? And then he's like, well, I don't like replicated cookies. So I thought that was a connection to going back all the way to Measure of a Man. To me, that was a connection to his way of bringing together artificial things and making them live a real life. So he's making these replicated ingredients, but he's trying to make something real out of it, or getting close to as close to real as you can with something artificial. And I think that's, to me, a metaphor for what he's doing with the androids, especially you find out with what he does with Daj and Soji. He's like, I sent them so they could find out the truths about things that are happening. And he sends them off to these 2 different places. And they're definitely not your run-of-the-mill synths in any way. You can tell that. Right. He has made them, they are the egg and the flour. He has made them artificially, but he wants to bake them. That's what I took from it.
He wants to create life. Mm-hmm. And the book I just mentioned, he actually says that his goal is to make life. And it's like what you're saying. He can use synthetic materials, but, he then wants to use that to create something real, something that is living. And with the cookies, it would be the same way. It doesn't matter where the ingredients are coming from. He can replicate cookies, but he really wants to replicate the ingredients and use those ingredients to make and bake something real.
Yeah, and that was the thread to me that was interesting. And clearly she is kind of perplexed by it. And it's interesting that in the future people don't bake. I don't know what's the future even interesting if you can't bake.
People
pizza.
Bake. I just think that people get busy or whatever, and they replicate a lot of their foods, but then they bake occasionally.
All right, okay. I will let you be the authority on this because
that's what Neelix told me.
Yes, I hear you, man. That is true. Neelix did say that. So from here we go to, Jurati has an emotional reaction. She cries. And then you see that they have like a romantic connection, and she's hiding it from everyone. So that's where they sow the seeds of, oh, she's clearly not who she is saying she is to everybody.
See, I still think, I thought she is who she is. It's just there's something going on. Like, I'm not saying that she isn't who she is, but there's something more going on with her that she hasn't revealed and hasn't been revealed to us.
So let's get into that. Because I have another connection here. So then we go to the La Serena Bridge, where all these ads come up on each of their panels. So it starts with Rios's panel, and this repair guy comes up, and he's like I forget what alien species he is, but you remember the ones that are in blue and they have this line running down their face?
Yes.
I
can't remember what they're called, but yes, I know.
And it's them, but
Bolians?
Yes, I think so. And
oh man, I'm doing good tonight.
Because he mentions Bolians too. He's like, oh yeah, we have this Bolian stuff here. And so he's holding this spanner, and he's like, captain should be aware of his ship. And then you cut to Picard, and a lady's trying to sell him this grand experience in a hotel. And then
come on, Jean-Luc. JL, do it.
And then you cut to Jurati, who is being hit by a big robot, like best example I can come up is like the Real Steel movie. It's like an old Hugh Jackman movie from a few years ago. And then you cut to Rafi, and it's like a venom leafy garden guy who's trying to sell her, who's trying to help her get snake bit or like get her that snake leaf. Now, here's something that I thought was very interesting. If you think about it, each one of those ads is very suited to the person that they're showing it to.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a targeted ad to that person. Like if you think about it, all Rios cares about is a ship and being a captain, right? So of course they would sell him the repair. And then Picard is all about the finer things in life, and he wants to live this like distinguished, quiet life. And so they sell him this grand experience. Jurati deeply has this, even though she doesn't show it, I think she has this deep need to be like combative and be loud and would like belligerent.
Yeah.
And so that's why this big robot shows up for her. And then of course we all know Rafi's addiction. Yeah. And so that's why that snake bit guy shows up to her.
And she refuses it.
Yeah. So like, does that mean that in the future, no matter where you go in the universe, there is like a web search history that follows you on the things that you looked up? And just like today, if you go to eBay
Probably.
and type like action figure, which is what I do most of the time. And then,
it's the cookies. Remember, this whole episode is just full of cookies. So.
Yeah. Well done.
They were
Good
doing
wordplay.
Searches and the cookies,
these are cookies about I'm so glad you're on this episode, Bruce.
Oh, well, thank you.
I appreciate that dad joke, even if a lot of people might not get it. I appreciate the
half the audience is tuned out by now. So.
No, they're here and they're listening to you. So I thought that was really cool. What I thought was awesome is that nothing shows up for Elnor because clearly
he doesn't have a search history, probably.
Yes. Also,
in all seriousness, it's like you're saying. All these people are in the computers, probably doing something, and as soon as they're getting to the planet, it's reading some kind of search history or whatever that they've been doing on this ship. And Elnor hasn't done any of that. He
has been off the grid while he was living in Basti.
Yeah,
because there is nothing there. He's like a man out of time and space.
And even if it wasn't reading things from what they were doing on the ship, it just could be it's reading their accounts or something or whatever from past searches from years and years. And Elnor doesn't have a computer. He didn't grow up with one.
It's also like, even if they were doing something to find out about these people, what would he have? He lives the life of absolute candor. Like he's basically a sage, like a saint, a warrior, saintly guy. Of course, he wouldn't have anything. I thought that was pretty interesting. So then we cut to Rafi talking about the Facers Guild and how she has tracked Maddox, but now he's part of this negotiation from the Facers Guild, and they're trying to trade him into the Tal Shiar, trying to essentially sell him. And then she mentions that somebody named Bajaziel is trying to sell him off. Now that's when Seven's ears perk up, and she walks up and she's like, "Oh, I know Bajaziel." And then she talks a little bit about what's going on there, but then it essentially ends with her saying, "You know what you can do? You can offer me as trade," because she clearly is all about the Borg, and who else has more Borg implants than me? So I am the perfect person for you to go down and pretend to be these Facers, so you can get in touch with them and get Maddox, and then we'll figure out the rest later. What did you think of this scene?
To me, it was a little predictable because we know what's going on, but the crew doesn't. So when she's like, "Oh, I know what we could use," and they're like, "What?" It's like, well, we know she's going to offer herself up. So
it was an interesting scene. I like that. The most important thing to me here is all the exposition about the Facers Guild. Now, the Facers Guild are like a group of brokers, right?
Yeah, they're brokers. Yeah, and they're selling parts and exchanging money and representing other people, and yeah.
I found it very interesting that we didn't find one Ferengi person doing any of these broker stuff all over Freecloud, except for Quark, who's mentioned by name.
Yes,
but
it was.
You think Ferengi would be all over this brokery money?
Well, and they
stuff.
might be, and they could be, but we're just not seeing them in this scene.
Yeah, maybe there's like a no Ferengi policy or something on there. But that might not be true because there's a Quark's bar down there. Anyway, we'll get into it, man. So here we actually go down to the planet and the camera zooms and flies through space as it brings us to that bar that they're supposed to be in. And we see Rios just standing there with his pimp outfit, as you said, his space pimp outfit. And now, here are a few things I noticed. This is the most Blade Runner scene I've seen in a Star Trek show, like with the giant hologram and the bright lights and the shameless ads. It's like the other thing I saw like this was the Boston scene, like when it was establishing Boston in the pilot with Dodge. There was some of that there with the ads. You remember that?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But here are a few things I noticed, and tell me if you noticed something else. Now, the girl dancing in the hologram, that's an Orion girl, right? Is she like a green? I know she's green, and we have seen her before.
Probably. I didn't look at her that closely.
Okay. She's like clearly a giant 50, 60 foot dancing hologram trying to get people in. I think she's one of the Orion girls from TOS. I'm sure that would make sense. Yeah. And our listeners will tell us all about it if that is not the case. But then did you see Mr. Mott's Emporium?
Yes, his hair emporium.
Yes.
I did notice that. Yeah.
Looks like that happened. And then did you see a Quark sign?
I saw a Quark sign. I also saw opposite of that a sign that said Dabo tables.
Yes, that is right. And so clearly Quark's little ad that he shows, you remember in one of the episodes in DS9, he shows the Quark's bar idea to Kira and they're like, this guy. And then clearly that has become a thing.
Well, no, I was just going to say that Dayton Ward released a travel guide for the Klingon Empire for Kronos, and there's a Quark's bar. So Quark has expanded his bar to other places.
Ooh, I need to check that out. That's awesome. That's a cool Easter egg. Did you also notice that in the very corner of the scene, there is a rule of acquisition? What is yours is ours?
No, I missed that.
So if you, just before the scene cuts out, if you pause it and you look to the very right, there is a little, in quotes, it's like, what is yours is ours. It's one of the rules of acquisition. It's like right there with the Quark's bar sign. That was pretty interesting to me. So anyway, we find out that the crew is trying to get into outfits. What did you think of everyone's outfits? Like Rios and Picard and...
Oh, I love those because that's what got me excited about this episode from the previews from the previous week. It's like seeing them dressed up. It's like, okay, this is going to be a fun one. Actually, to be honest with you, Rios' outfit, I want him in that all the time. I think I want him to come back the next episode and say, I don't know, I like the look. I'm keeping the hat with the feather.
I think Santiago Cabrera is having the most fun out of any of the people on the show. He got to, in the 5 episodes, he's gotten to do an English accent, a Canadian accent, speak complete Spanish, play drunk, and now play a space pimp. Like he is doing every possible variation of an acting role that he can do. I like that. I like the little jump he was doing as they introduced him, like this little head bob while they're dressing him up. And Rafi's like, she's giving him the rundown. She's like, hey, you can't do the existential spaceman shtick that you've been doing. You need to be upbeat and kind of flamboyant. And
I love those scenes where she's preparing them to go down, and then we're seeing them do it, and then we come back to the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a heist movie.
Yeah. And the whole thing is kind of a heist. So of course it would be like a heist movie. It's like Ocean's 11 meets sci-fi, and it ends with Seven saying, "You need a feather in your hat," and then you see the feather in the hat as he's being scanned, and he walks into the bar, and then in the bar he goes up to the bartender and he orders a drink with 2 umbrellas, clearly to stand out, and then Vup shows up behind him, and he's like, "Feeling lucky, Mr. Rios," and then they go into like a bit of exposition on what they're trying to do. This is where we get the Quark name drop.
Yes, and I didn't pick that up until the third viewing when I had the closed captioning on. I didn't even realize he said Quark because, he's got the teeth and everything in there. It's hard to talk, and he was just like, Quark, and I didn't realize he said Quark.
So to me, Vup looks like if the Morn and the soldiers of the Dominion had a baby.
Maybe they did.
Yeah, and like he looks, the Beta Anari looks so interesting.
But I will say the thing I like about that is it's introducing a new alien, and we're not just focusing on existing aliens.
Yeah,
it's to have a mix.
And Beta Anari name seems pretty interesting because if you remember, Betazoids they're empaths and they can tell how you're feeling. And the fact that somebody named Beta Anari can know things about you from your smell, I thought that was a nice nod to the Betazoids.
Yeah, that's the last thing I want is a dude like that coming over and smelling me.
Oh, but clearly they're in a world where they just have to get through it. So then she sets up these beta blockers that he sprayed with to avoid his scent. And then he says, "Oh, we have this Borg prisoner who has all these Borg implants, and we would like you to essentially trade Maddox for this Borg prisoner." And then you cut to the other people. You see Picard with an eye patch. Now, what do you think of Picard with an eye patch?
I just love him playing the character of this eccentric French guy. You're like, "Oh, you want the Borg woman?" I mean, it's like, I just kept thinking about when you think of the early days of Picard in The Next Generation, you would never expect that character to do something like this. It just shows how much he's changed over time.
Yeah, and I love that he is now just having a sense of humor about it. He's enjoying it, and he's in it. He's in the moment. I dug that he was not only there, he was giving other people advice and suggestions. I thought it was interesting that they had an eye patch character. Now we have Janeway with the eye patch. If you there is a really cool parody show whose name I'm forgetting now, but Kate Mulgrew plays a lady with an eye patch. She's like the captain of this SHIELD CSI type show. It's supposed to be all humorous.
Okay.
But it was.
I don't know if I've seen that or not.
I'll send you like the name of it later on. But so this is like we had Miles with the eye patch. You remember those in the holodeck episodes?
Yes, I do remember that. Yeah.
And then is it Star Trek 3 where the villain has a little metal?
Star Trek 6, The
Star Trek
Undiscovered
6.
Country.
Yes.
General Chang.
General Chang has like an eye patch.
Yes.
And who else are we missing from Star Trek that has an eye patch?
Oh, what was the dude? It was from the original series. He had an eye patch. I don't remember his name right now or the episode. But yeah, I'm sure we've seen some. I just can't remember them all. Yeah. I have not spent my time. That's one thing in my Star Trek fandom I haven't done is sit around and figure out who's wearing eye patches and who doesn't.
These are the things I think about when I'm on my 6th viewing. I'm like, I need to bring up who else wore an eye patch so we could do like a who wore it best.
I could see Tom Paris wearing an eye patch at some point.
Sure. Yeah. Every one of those guys. It was, I thought, I like that. Of course, when it comes to who wore it best, for me, it's Miles. You might say Picard with an eye patch. To each their own. Anyway, from here, we essentially set up that they're all going down dressed as different people. And then Seven is going to be the prisoner, so they put a bag on her face. And Jurati's job is to beam them back up when they're ready for it. So as they're going down, I thought this was awesome that Elnor discovers what lying is while they're all doing this.
Because he's never heard lies.
Yes.
Everything's been truth. That's how they do things in that group he's with. I can't remember the names right now.
The Absolute Candor, the Kovat Millet.
Yeah, that's it. Yes. I mean, they're very straightforward.
Yeah.
They don't lie.
I feel like it's the best of Romulans and Vulcans because Vulcans cannot lie.
Right.
These Romulans by principle do not lie. I never thought I would meet a Romulan who the humans would introduce lying to. I thought
that's true because the Romulans, they're very secretive. So in order to do that, sometimes, they're they probably lie a lot. And here's a Romulan who doesn't even know what that is.
Yeah, I love that he's discovering it. He's like, oh, we're lying. We're pretending that we're something that we're not.
Yeah, and it's his enthusiasm. Oh, are we lying? Is that what we're doing? Ooh. You know?
And then he feels sad that he's like, oh, everybody except me is pretending. And then he gets like a jacket and then he does his thing. That was pretty funny. I love that they're introducing him. It's like a boy becoming a man by discovering the evils of the world.
I think we'll continue to see that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think there'll be a lot of fish out of water stuff with him that they'll do with this character. So anyway, now all of them go down to Freecloud, and Picard says something very interesting while he is showing off this prisoner to Bjayzl. And he's like, the Borg stays in them. They can pretend that it doesn't, but it never goes away. Mm-hmm. Isn't it interesting that Picard in this getup is saying that after everything we've seen him go through in Best of Both Worlds and First Contact?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody says that the writers don't know Star Trek, I don't know what you're talking about.
And there are people who say that, which is ridiculous to me. Anyway, so what I loved here, one of the things I loved the most, maybe you might not agree, but I loved that Picard had this eye patch and he looked like someone I don't know if I ever saw a Picard in that kind of who was your favorite from all the Freecloud outfit guys? What was your favorite skin?
Oh man, I think it would be Rios. I think, I love how his attitude was in that outfit, and that's kind of bringing out more of his current attitude, but just overplaying it. I almost want him to just always be in that. Like, just like that's his standard uniform. I want that action figure.
Oh, you might want the action figure. I want the pin, buddy. And who better to give me that pin than Fansets?
Fansets would do that.
Yes, our sponsor, Fansets. Now, I have to brag a little bit about Fansets because I get the things they're doing, man. It's like, do you have any Fansets pins?
I do.
Like
I don't have a lot of them, but I do have some.
It's time for you to stock up with this awesome 15% discount code that we have for PoliTreks. Now, this is a very secretive code. So do you have like a pen and paper ready to go?
I have right here, yes.
All right. Well, it's going to be a while. So I want you to be quick on the draw and write it down because I won't say it multiple times, maybe twice.
Okay.
The discount code that you can use for PoliTreks on fansets.com is PoliTreks.
How do you spell that?
PoliTreks.
PoliTreks. I'll never remember that.
Just so difficult.
That down.
And the one time, I'm never saying it again. So while I was watching it, I was like, I would love a Freecloud set of all these people. Each one of them in their outfits. I will even buy the Elnor jacket one because it's just a jacket. It's nothing really cool, but I will buy it because that's how much of a Fansets lover I am. And where better to sell it than STLV?
Oh, absolutely.
Like if you're going to debut something like this, do it at STLV. I hope they do it. I'm going to put in a word. I'm going to start a social media movement trying to get everybody on board, giving me a Freecloud set of Fansets pins.
Count me in. I will participate in that.
Thank you, sir.
Like back you up on that. And if they have them at STLV, I'm getting them.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I don't know if they'll do this, but what they are doing now, this is the exciting news that I was teasing about earlier. Now, are you familiar with the Women of Trek collection, Bruce?
The Women of Trek collection? I don't think I am.
Fansets did a really awesome initiative where they made these Women of Trek pins. They're exclusive pins made by Fansets showcasing the female characters in Star Trek. Mm-hmm. And they've made a few so far, like some of the popular women have been done. They did the round one. They're doing round two, and it's going to start in May. And it's going to have Jadzia. They're going to do a Nurse Chapel pin. They're going to do a Sylvia Tilly pin. They're going to do a 7 of 9. And also they're going to do a Hoshi Sato pin.
Oh, great.
And if these are not the typical, like, just two-legged character pins, these are full-on portraits of the actual the character as we see them in a setting, and the Woman of Trek banded down. It's so cool, man. You should check it out.
So you've seen these?
Oh, they've sold an entire round.
Oh, okay. I probably have seen them then.
And they had like a set of it on sale during STLV.
Okay.
2019, and they're doing round 2, which
I wasn't
starts.
at last year's. I missed last year's.
And they're doing round 2 right now, so you can get in on it. It's like, it is beautiful. I'm not just saying that because they're a sponsor. I'm saying it because I love it. And they sell it by the set. And I believe very soon they're going to do a short resell of the first round. And like, stay tuned on that. There is so much going on with fansets, man. Anyway, I hope I get a Freecloud round is what I wanted to say. But I can
get a 15% discount going to fansets.com and typing in PoliTreks.
That is correct. Once you finish your order and you go to checkout, there's a promo code section. Mm-hmm. Type in PoliTreks and boom, 15% off.
Boom.
You can try the other shows' codes, but they won't feel as good as PoliTreks.
I want a Shashank pin, but I don't think they have those yet.
Thank you, sir. I don't think there is enough metal in the world to make a Shashank pin. Anyway, now back to the show.
I keep wondering where your dog is.
Oh, he's sleeping, man.
Oh, that's
I have learned my lesson. PoliTreks listeners will know after the years of bow-wows on this show that they've put up with. I planned my entire day with Zod around the episode recording. So if I'm recording here through the entire day, I will tire him out. I'll get him a few walks. He'll get some exercise just in time for having his dinner and going to sleep. So I can record this in peace.
He sounds like he's living the life I want to live.
Oh, his life is a party every day, buddy. Like, people feed him, play with him, give him all the entertainment. He gets social media love. His life is awesome. Anyway, now what is awesome is back on the show in Freecloud, they're trying to sell Seven. They're trying to give off Seven as this, take her in trade. And then they're talking, they're discussing, and then we cut to the Rafi and Gabriel scene, which I think is one of the most sensitive scenes I've seen in Star Trek in a while. And this is where the name Stardust City comes from. If you notice, the name of that reproductive services that she's going to, it's called Stardust City. And it was, let's just talk about the scene. So the Rafi shows up, she's at this hospital clinic type place where she's walking in, and she sees her son sitting a few meters away, and she's just looking at him. And if we know this is her son, because earlier in the episode we see her looking at a screen of somebody named Gabriel Wang.
That's right. Yep.
And she wipes it away as Rios walks up to her, and so she walks up to him and she starts talking to him, and clearly he's not happy to see her. Like, he is dismissive, he's rude. He immediately wants her to go away. And then it's she's telling him, I'm trying to clean up my act. I would like you back in my life. I want to be a part of your life.
Well, it's like you say, he's not happy to see her, but he even mentions that if it had been years earlier, he would have been.
We've talked about addiction in Star Trek in the past, but never this deeply. Like, not with a character who's living with addiction.
Yeah, this is going to go on for a while.
And the consequences of being an addict. Like, even if you think about addiction in Star Trek, probably is like for an episode and then it goes away. Like, one episode is the next episode, people are fine, like nothing happened.
Well, even on our live show, we were talking about this, she's saying how she's clean. But, I mean, we just saw just a couple episodes earlier, she was doing the whatever, snake weed or whatever it's called. And that's the thing. It's like she hasn't been clean for long. She may think, I think the thing is she wants to be clean. She thinks maybe, that she has hope now, that she has this mission, that she's getting back on track. But she needs a little more time to get her act together. She can't just give it a week or two and say, okay, I'm clean, I'm sober, whatever. I've got my act back together. It's going to take her some time. And it's probably good that she doesn't reconnect with her son. I guess what I'm saying is it's probably good he didn't accept her with open arms yet, because I don't think she's really ready. Because even if they bonded, I think she would screw it up. So she needs more time.
Part of the reason why they drifted apart is not just because of her addiction, but because she was kind of obsessed with the synths thing.
Which is another addiction. She was obsessed.
Yeah.
That's the problem. That's why her whole world crashed on her. She didn't have an addiction, but when she was obsessed with this mission that she was working on, when she got kicked out of Starfleet and everything stopped, and she'd already kind of ruined her family.
Right.
She had nothing left.
One of the things I was really wondering about is, yeah, you're right. This became like she's an addict and she's looking for things to be addicted to.
She's looking for purpose.
And
that was giving her purpose, which is the wrong thing to do.
And clearly it was more important to her. This was more important to her than her family, which you see became the issue. Now, one of the things that in this conversation that she's having with him, he mentions is the Conclave of Eight. What is that? Do you know what that is?
No. Do you?
No, I feel like it might be a Section 31 thing.
I don't know. I do remember that, and I was going to try to research that, and I didn't.
I couldn't find. Like I typed Conclave of Eight Star Trek, nothing showed up for me except for like she mentioning this.
How did he? Oh gosh, I don't know.
It could be, to me, it felt like, the people who say things like, oh, 9/11 was an inside job. Like it felt to me like he was calling it like a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
It's
no, I think we're going to find out probably more about that then.
Yeah. And that's the thing she disagrees with him on. And she's like, it's a conspiracy. It's crazy. It's much bigger than any of us. So it leads to like a stalemate. He dismisses her, but not before she gets to meet his wife or lover.
Right.
Is she a Romulan, the lady?
I assumed she was a Romulan.
Yeah, like a Romulan or a Vulcan, and she's pregnant, and he's like, "Oh, we're going to have a granddaughter. You're going to have a granddaughter," and then they walk away. It was such an interesting, touching scene that I am appreciative of it for. Like, it's people talk about hope in Star Trek, and how there is hope in knowing that, or believing that we have solved all our problems and we become this perfect species 200 years from now. But I also think there is hope in that humans just don't stop being human. Like we make mistakes, and the next morning we get up and we try to keep ourselves from falling back down, and that's our life. And I thought that showing like this addict character and the life that she's leading is also strangely hopeful. That's the kind of humanity that they want to talk about.
Yeah, and that's the thing I like about Star Trek, that it seems like in the future, everybody's got their life put together. Like we're all got it straight and nothing's wrong with us and we all get along. At least, Roddenberry made that vision essential to the crew of the Enterprise D, that everybody has to get along. That's what they do in Starfleet. That doesn't necessarily mean all of humanity, maybe more so in Starfleet, but we're not perfect. And it is about what we do to overcome things. So we're going to stumble, we're going to fall. Let's see if we can pick ourselves up, and not just ourselves, but what others do to help that. And I would like to see this crew helping Raffi through this. I'd like to see Picard doing something about it, that it's the support to get you there. And I hope we get to see some of that.
And she mentions it too, because clearly she needs help. And she talks about it the first time we really see her in her conversation with Picard. She's like, why didn't you ever come and see me? Not to like meet me as a crew member, but just come and talk to me. Like she needs the things that an addict needs. And you're right. It would be awesome if somebody in the show, because clearly her family has abandoned her. We don't know who her husband is yet. He's not around. And I hope something comes out of it. But anyway, back to the show. So this happens, and then Bjayzl pulls the veil off of the prisoner's head down in Freecloud. And it's 7. And she says, oh, it's nice to see you, Annika. Essentially, and then everybody's like, whoa, what's happening? And then Elnor breaks the ice. Is like, are we still pretending? And he's like, no. And then Picard says, no, I think everybody's finally being themselves. Thus, all of them realizing that they were kind of played by 7. And this was 7 running like her own little game. Now, what was interesting to me is, so she calls her as Annika, not 7. So it seems like after Voyager, she goes back to Annika.
That would make sense to me. I kind of expected that, but I also feel like the fact that they have Picard refer to her as 7 of 9 when we first introduce her is to kind of help the audience understand who she is.
Yeah.
But, in the novels, and I know the novels aren't canon or whatever, and they're going a different path than this, she started going by the name of Annika. So, as she's reclaiming her humanity, she's adopting that name. But at the same time, I can see her keeping with the name 7. But the fact that she lived close to or near this woman or whatever, but we find out they have a past, that maybe she was going by the name of Annika, or maybe that was just something that those who were very close to her would call her.
Yeah, and we do find out about this past because Bjayzl kind of infers that she infiltrated the Fenris Rangers. Yep. And in the name of ranging, she found people to pick up and sell off, which is so dark and so dirty. And it was such a turning point for me. Like, that makes the character irredeemable to me. Like, I don't know how you make a character better from there. Like someone like Bajazil, she's so happy doing the shady thing she does. Anyway, Seven gets a hold of her neck, and then Picard says something like, "Oh, murder is not justice, right? Like you can't." And that's such a Picard thing to do. If Kirk was there, I imagine he would have just straight up punched Bajazil, knocked her face off.
Oh, I think he would punch her, but he wouldn't murder her.
Yeah, and then he would just be like, he would just walk away. Probably he'll be like, "Do whatever you want. I don't have time for this." Yeah. But Picard, the eternal believer and uplifter, he's like, "Oh, murder is not justice. Like, you can do what you want to her, but that's not going to resolve what you're trying to do." And then Rios walks in with the pragmatism, and he's like, if you kill her here, there'll be a bounty on all of us, and we'll be fine. But Picard and Elnor will be toast.
And this is right after Rios kills Vup, Mr. Vup.
Yes, and he does shoot Vup just to like bring the advantage back to their side.
Well, because Mr. Vup actually pulled out a weapon and was getting ready to shoot or do something, whatever, to Annika and Picard or whatever. Yeah. So he saved them by doing that.
That is right. And then we got to like back on the ship where Jurati is having like a crisis. And then you later find out what the actual crisis is, which is like kind of psyching herself up. But they see Maddox, and Maddox is fine. And then before everything goes down, Seven's like, no, go. Rios is like, hey, so we need to do something. We need to get out. And then Seven's like, yeah, let's beam out of here. What did you think of that scene? Like, did you... Now, this is where the episode becomes a little weak for me. Like, it's a little too happy-go-lucky that nothing happens to any of these people who just infiltrated this giant citywide network that
they got out running. Easy. They were able to beam back up. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That didn't bother me. I mean, that's typical Star Trek too.
Nobody even takes a phaser shot, man. Like it's just they go down there and they go back up. It's like nothing even happened. It might as well just have been that Maddox was just lying somewhere and they went and picked him up. But to me, that was where the episode became a little weak. I was like, they're on this planet that is supposed to be what's the crappy planet from The Last Jedi, which is the
like Canto Bight?
Yes. I did not like that movie. That's a whole other episode, but I did not like that movie.
We can talk about that some other time.
Yes, but yeah, it's like Canto Bight, one of the things I appreciated was the two people who went there, they're out of their element. Like they're running the whole time. And then here, all these people who have never shown up, maybe Rafi has some connections and stuff, but none of the other ones have ever been here. Elnor, it's his first time it's his first time pretending.
Yeah.
And then nothing happens. Like I was
expected them to get shot? Is that what you're saying?
I expected it to end in some kind of a gunfight, which I guess it does at the end of the episode.
Yeah, in a sense, later it does. Yeah.
And so that was what I was like. It felt a little too suspicious to me. I was like, how did they get away so easily? But anyway, they beam back up. And here's where we get the scene between Maddox is clearly injured, so they rush him off to the hospital. And then Picard thanks Seven for her help. And then Seven picks up. Seven's like, can I take these weapons? And he's like, yeah, of course. It's the least we can do. And as she walks away, they both see face to face. And they have this incredible conversation about what it means to be ex-Borg.
Yes.
And Seven asks him, so after everything that happened with you, do you think you have reclaimed your humanity from the Borg? And Picard's like, yes. And then Seven says, all of it? And then Picard says, no, but I am working on it.
No, he says we're both working on it.
We're both working on it. And then Seven says, every damn day of my life.
Yes.
That was I think if this entire show ended here, I would have been like, we got that, man. I am good. That was worth my money.
If you were going to sell a Star Trek fan to watch the show, just show them that scene.
Yes.
And say, here's Picard and Seven of Nine interacting with each other, discussing how they were both former Borg and how they're dealing with it and reclaiming their humanity.
Mm-hmm. And
that was so great. And even before that, when she's asking about the phasers, you could tell he's a little hesitant. I mean, he's agreeing to it, but I think he's also knowing, okay, I'm not going to be able to stop her. She's already determined to do what she's going to. He knows what's going to happen, and he's allowing it.
Yeah, and this is not. Had this been TNG, he would have probably found a way to stop her, and she would have stopped. But this is a Picard that is now discouraged from Starfleet, and he knows that not everybody's going to listen to him, and that his way of life is not the way of life that everybody leads. Like to Seven, murder is justice. And that is the kind of life that she leads. And that's the path that she wants to go down. And he is such a, this is the Picard now. He helps her do it because she helped him out. He's like, a transaction for a transaction. And I love the turn.
Does that disappoint you that this Picard is different?
No, I love it. It's because that's kind of what happens. Like if you think about what happens to people toward the end of their lives, there's a reason why their youth and their middle age becomes so nostalgic to them, because they change as people. Like all the people that today we think are old and bitter, they were at one point these young and hopeful people that were the bright future of the world. And if you think about it, those are the same people that today are old and bitter and complaining about the young. Yeah. And that's not who Picard is, but he has come to a point where he knows what battles he can win and what battles he cannot win.
Yeah, and he knows when he can change someone and when he can't.
Right. And he changed Elnor. He knew that he could do that, and he did. He knows he cannot change Seven. So he tries once and then just steps back.
And I would also kind of think that maybe there's a part of him that hopes that she will do the right thing. That maybe she has the intentions of going back down with those phasers and going after Bjayzl. But I think there's also a part of him is like, maybe she won't do something. Maybe she'll change her mind. He can't make it for her.
To me, Picard is in the headspace where he is fine just people doing the thing that they think is right.
Even though it's murder?
Because he says this is not justice.
It's not.
But he also says you can do this, but it is not justice. So he doesn't say this is a make or a break for me, but he says you can try going down this road, but nothing will come of it, because I have gone down this road, and we see him go down it in First Contact when he's just on a rampage against the Borg until he gets to the end, and he's like, this is not going to end well. And I think he's like, let Seven have this. And then she'll come to a point where she will see that all of this ultimately doesn't give her the joy that she wants.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I really read it as, I think he wants to stop her, but even if he stopped her now, she's going to find a way and do it anyway. There's no even, why he's not even going to waste the energy.
Yeah, and that was... So all of this leads to the Voyager theme being played for a second. Did you catch
wasn't that great?
And I thought that was such a cool turn, because it's they kind of lead you to believe, she's going to do this real heroic thing and just give everything up and become a good guy. And then she goes down to the planet and she literally just says hi and starts shooting.
Yes.
Like this is where the movie goes full Punisher Warzone comics.
I was hoping that she was going to go down and maybe meet up with Chakotay and they start a relationship again.
Oh, the universe would implode, Bruce. We could not have TVs because they would all just explode if that much goodness happened in one episode. But anyway, so she goes down there and she just starts fighting, just shooting people. And Bjayzl goes down, and then all of Bjayzl's security network comes down. It was just, what did you think of that shootout? It was very well shot. I'll say that for the action. I love the action in this show. I think they're doing some really cool, interesting things.
I did. When she shot Bjayzl, I like how she dissolves, but there's like a red to it that almost looked like blood.
Mm-hmm.
Just, and I was like, that was actually pretty cool. And then when she's like shooting all the security people that are coming, and she's just like, hey, I'm 7 and 9. I'm badass. Yeah. It's like, yes, you are. Yes, you are.
This is 7 of 9's world. We're just living in it.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
She is destroying. She's just on a rampage.
But I think we'll see her again.
Oh, of course. One of the reasons why I think we will see her again is because if you go back to the very beginning of the show's PR campaign, they did like interviews with her and Hugh and Jonathan Del Arco, and she's talking about how she helped Jonathan Del Arco on set. Mm-hmm. You remember that? And if you connect the dots, they wouldn't have been on a set together had they not filmed things together.
That's true, yeah. But also in this episode, she did give Picard like a little card. If you need me, contact me. So that's a little hint.
I bet he will contact her once he's on the artifact. and he's at his wit's end, and he needs.
He'll be like, I found Chakotay. I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I'm obsessed with the Chakotay
Oh,
thing right now.
I get. We can all
They're
tell that's an obsession.
They're not the worst. They're kind of the worst Star Trek couple, really. But anyway.
So, well, no comments there. Anyway, so moving on. Now we leave Seven there for the moment. Then we come back to Maddox in the hospital of the ship, and he and Picard are having a conversation, and they essentially talk. And Maddox finds out that Picard knows about Daj, and then he says, "Oh yeah, there's a twin. Her name is Soji. She's on the artifact." And then he's like, Picard says, "Hey, so we need to save Soji. What can we do?" And he's trying to find information, and he's like, Maddox says, "Yeah, I sent her to the artifact, and then I sent Daj to Earth, or just like, and then eventually to Okinawa if things had gone their way." And then she's like, to find out the truth, because there are lies upon lies.
Yeah, the ban too. He says, yeah, to find the truth, the ban, lies upon lies.
It's so what he's obviously talking about the Shatvash. I think
more.
Yeah, and he's talking about, and he says he doesn't know what is happening. So if I understand correctly, maybe I'm completely off. So did he create these two to find out what the Shatvash is and how they can help?
Gosh, that's a good question. I didn't think of it that he created them for that reason. I figured he created them and then sent them later for that reason. Like, I don't think he created them to find the truth, but I don't know. That's a good point.
Yeah, because he says that he doesn't say anything along the lines of, I sent them to find the truth about themselves, which is what you would think he would do in a situation like this. But he sends them to the specific places where the Shatvash are supposed to be in. They're supposed to be in the artifact, and then on Earth in Starfleet. So I don't know if he created them for that purpose, or if he just, like you said, he just activated that in them so they can go find out the truth.
Well, let's just say it this way. He didn't create them. He's not doing all this synthetic life stuff just to send them on a mission. Right. He's there to try to create life. But did he activate them? Did he finish them to send them on this quest?
Yeah, and
that's the question. Yeah. Is that the purpose of finishing them and getting them out there?
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I guess we'll find out more. Again, please tell us about it. If you want to tell me personally, you can do that on @gutter_hero. Twitter is about the only social media I do. So GUTTER_HERO. You can also just tweet at us on PoliTreks. I have been enjoying. We get all kinds of awesome responses about last time I asked people on the show, "Oh, where do you listen to us?" And somebody was like, "I listen to you on the treadmill. I listen to you at work." That was really cool of them. So yeah, tell us about this. Why do you think Maddox created Daj and Soji? Because I can't figure it out, and I am the guy who has been doing the Charlie Day, Sunny in Philadelphia, paper board upon paper board, FBI office kind of thing, and I can't figure it out. So anyway, from here we go to this tiny scene where you find out that Rafi is back on the ship, and Rios and Picard are laying down a course to the artifact, and he's like, "We should talk about a stowaway." And then they cut to the stowaway, who's kind of brooding and existential, and she's a space woman. And now we cut to like the real big reveal in this episode that they saved for the very end, very fittingly, which is the Jurati and Maddox kind of interaction. So Picard, it says his piece, and then he walks away from Maddox. Jurati takes over, and she's kind of trying to help, or you think she's trying to help Maddox as he talks to her, and he's like,
right, because remember, they were in love, they were in a relationship. They're being reunited, and
that's what it's leads you to believe. At least Maddox thinks it is, because he's like, "Aggie, I couldn't have done any of this without your help."
And have you seen Daj? Did you see her?
And then Aggie suddenly starts breaking into tears, and she's like, "That's why all of this hurts so much." And then she injects him with poison that just kills him.
But she says right when she's doing that, "I wish you knew what I know. I wish I didn't know what I know. I wish they hadn't shown me."
Yeah.
And so I'm like, what does that mean?
Now there are, again, so many days and just drops of or really nuggets of information that we find out about. So is she talking, when she says they, does she mean Sharpash?
Honestly, well, at first I don't know. Very possibly, but I somehow think it's the Federation because, when we saw Commodore O,
Yeah.
I feel like there's something connected there. I think Commodore O showed her something.
And whatever Commodore O did convinced her to get on the ship and go to this place, kill Maddox, and then continue to follow them on the artifact to wherever they're going to put an end to all this. I guess to kill Soji. So they could.
Yes, I would think so.
So they could continue doing what they're doing.
But why did she find the need to kill Bruce Maddox?
That's another question. I don't know. Probably so he wouldn't have a chance to save Soji, because you'd think the guy who created Soji would have some kind of an advantage going in. So she maybe wanted to kill him or just stop all these sins altogether. Again, another question I don't have an answer to.
But I also feel like questions. He knows some information too that she's killing him to protect, not to be revealed.
Yes, and that might have to do with the way Soji and Daj were created. Just so many crazy connections. And this was again, people listening to the show know that I knew you can kind of, if you watch it with the same pessimism and cynicism that I watched it with, and you're suspecting everyone, I feel Jurati was like one of the most obvious ones to be evil. What did you think of that turn? Are you surprised at all? Are you taken aback? Did you expect it? How do you feel about it?
I think I was surprised about that scene. I wasn't quite expecting that to happen, but I'm not surprised that her character would have done that, because I think from that episode when she shows up at the chateau and she shoots one of those Romulans, and she's like, I'm joining you, I'm coming with you. And knowing that happened shortly after she was confronted by Commodore O, I thought, okay, she's probably there for some other reasons now. Mm-hmm. Again, I don't think of her as a villain necessarily. I just think that she's been exposed to something and she's on a different mission. And, and she killed Bruce Maddox, which of course is murder, but now she's the third character in this series to kill someone in this episode, because we had Rios kill, and we have had Seven kill someone, and now we've had Girardi kill someone.
It's going to be interesting. The show is at its halfway point, so they did this big reveal at the halfway point. Which is amazing.
Point. Yeah, we're only at the halfway point now. Like, I expect this to go on for a while. Gosh, we're already halfway through.
And I'm excited to see where it goes. This, like I said, before I close, I'll say this was still my second favorite episode. Like I said, I have the attention span of a 6-month-old. So if you throw lights and colors and funny dialogue, I will be in there for it.
And jiggle those keys.
Yeah, yes. Like Picard with the iPads was like them jangling the keys, just saying, hey, watch it. Right. And then I watched it, man. I really enjoyed this episode. Again, the evil turn happened, so we'll find out what happens next. So did you catch anything from the preview on the next Star Trek Picard?
I don't even.
There's like a music box. I saw somebody open a music box, and then Narek kind of reveals Soji's truth to her by putting her in this enclosed chamber, and she starts punching her way out of it.
Yeah. I remember seeing the clip on the Ready Room of a young Soji.
Ooh, I have not seen that.
Yes.
I have not seen Ready Room yet. I usually do that, but that was one I dropped. So I need to go back and watch it. Good one, my friend. I will check that out. That'll be interesting. All right, buddy. Before we get out of here, any other notes on the episode?
My gosh, we've covered so much. And I have notes here. The only thing I would mention that we did mention is the EMH. He showed up a couple times.
Yeah.
Which was, we briefly kind of mentioned it, but again,
I feel like that EMH is just there to be deactivated.
Well, I feel like, he is in a lot of way, but there's going to be something interesting with him, because he did show up right before she killed Maddox, and he was ready to, oh my gosh, we need to do it. And she deactivated him. Yeah. So I can see him talking to possibly Rios and saying, well, I could have saved him, but she shut me off. And then Rios might say, well, she told me she wasn't in the room when he died. There's going to be something with the EMH that's going to clue the rest of the crew that something isn't quite right with Ag. That's what I'm thinking.
And we will stay tuned for it. We'll come back here and do this again. Bruce is doing his unnamed live show that you can find on Dan's network, I believe.
Isn't that great? An unnamed show. It's
Yeah,
so
it's just
awesome.
your podcast is like the Nameless from
The Nameless. Yeah.
which is what the Borg autopsy people call you remember that on the Gray Zone when they're
Yes.
operating and she's like, oh, these are the Nameless, and Soji's like, why are you calling them the Nameless? And he's like, yeah, that's a name. The Nameless is a name. So that should be your live show's name is the Nameless.
It's the Nameless.
The Nameless live show.
Live show. Yes.
And
I'm writing that down.
yes, please give me proper credit. And
I will.
I hope. I cannot wait to have you back, my friend. It was such a pleasure having you here. You've redeemed the white guys on the show for me after the terrible experience.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad I can represent. So.
And just so happy to have you. Now, before we get out of here, where can people find you? Tell us about all the interesting, fun things you're doing.
Okay, well, besides that live show, which I said is Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. I don't know how many Fridays we're going to do that, but we're at least going to do it through this season of Picard. And that's at Kurt Tratz. That's Star Trek spelled backwards. That's the channel on YouTube. So check that out. And then I do Literary Treks on Trek FM, which is the official Star Trek books and comics podcast of that network. And we have Una McCormick coming up on a March 15th episode to talk about her Picard novel. We had Mike Johnson on, who's a friend of yours, that came on to talk about the Countdown comics. That was a couple episodes ago. So we're covering it all.
Awesome. That sounds delightful.
Even Kirk Fu Manual by Dayton Ward. That episode comes out March 1st. So check that one out. It's a fun show. Oh, yeah. And then I do the Star Wars report. I'm not on as often anymore. I'm kind of taking less of an active role in that, but I am going to be on that occasionally, at least once a month. So Star Wars Report. And then Dan Gunther and I are coming out with a new podcast. Hasn't launched yet, but it's called Positively Trek. And we're taking a positive view, like this show does, but we're taking a positive view of Star Trek, all the series, the novels, the books, products, conventions, fandom, gaming, whatever. We're covering it all. And it's just, two guys hanging out, just, talking Star Trek stuff. So that one's coming out. Follow that on Twitter at Positively Trek. I'm on Twitter at Admiral_Rex. That's Admiral with a little underline and then Rex.
Awesome. People can find me on at Gutter_Hero. That's GUTTER_HERO. You can find this show on at PoliTreks. Also, throw in a like and a follow for Trek Geeks, which is our network that lets us do all kinds of crazy things here. And if you think we're crazy, you have to listen to some of those insane Trek Geek shows like Trek Rewind, the 5-Year Mission podcast, and this dumb show called Picard Live that Barry is doing. And then the Trek Geeks podcast, which is supposed to be the flagship, but that quality just keeps dropping. And that's why PoliTreks is here to keep things up.
That's why I'm on PoliTreks and not the other shows. I had to go to the best one.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I appreciate that so much. And until next time, you guys, make sure you listen to our shows. Make sure you stay tuned and enjoy Star Trek Picard. Enjoy being a Star Trek fan and be positive and respectful and live long and prosper and onward to Starside. Coconut.